Food systems are really collections of value chains or supply chains. When you think of it, it's like a tree diagram structure that it's not just the simple maize supply chain, but the supply chains to all of the inputs necessary for each of the segments of the product supply chain as well as into the farm. So for example, if you think about wholesalers and logistics segment of the maize supply chain, very important is the supply of trucking services to them. For example, in our work in Nigeria, we just did a large study actually of several thousand maize traders and found that very, very few of them own any trucks. Okay, they basically rent trucks, or much more common, there's third-party logistics services that they hire. And maybe 90% of the maize moved in Nigeria is moved by traders that are bringing in this maize by the supply chain of third-party logistics services. So if there's any problem with the truck services, and then it essentially shuts down the maize supply chain. Within the debate about food security and about food systems, there's often an emphasis on the farmer. Now the farmer is important. The farmer forms, in developing countries in general, about 40% of the value added and the costs of the total food supply chain. And then another 40%, equal to the amount of the farmer, is formed by the middle segments, which are the wholesaling, logistics, processing, warehousing, etc. Very important. And then the last 20% is the retail segment. Think of it also in terms of an hourglass, okay? And I was just thinking about this because we just did a study in Nigeria of maize traders. Maize is a very important staple in Nigeria, okay? And maize moves basically from northern Nigeria to southern Nigeria and around in northern Nigeria, 1,000 kilometers, okay? And you think about these actors called the maize traders. Nobody talks about them, or maybe they malign them and say they're exploitative traders. Where are those traders? But think about that group. It's about 10 to 15,000 people. Okay. Now that 10 to 15,000 people is the narrow part of the hourglass. What's on the other two sides? At the bottom of the hourglass are millions of maize farmers. Millions of farmers, then 10,000 traders, 15,000 traders. And then millions and millions of consumers. There's 160 million people. Half of them are in cities. That's 80 million people, depending on 15,000, 20,000 traders, okay? And those traders are depending on the third-party logistics system. So there's a whole set of cluster of actors, maybe 50,000 of them, 100,000 of them that are working together in this midstream, and the health and functioning of the whole supply chain of maize, the basic staple of Nigeria, is depending on that middle segment. The supply chain for food in Africa has increased by 800% in the past 25 years. In Southeast Asia, 1,000%. So you think about the huge volume increase in a relatively short time, and what kind of skills, capital, credit, knowledge, these diverse input supply systems that you need, regulations, protection, risk management, you need to grow a business of 1,000% increase over a relatively short time. You need a lot of help. Now, how many agencies, governments, researchers are really addressing the challenge of helping a gigantic enterprise grow that fast and grow well, dealing with problems of disease shock, energy shock, safety, climate, all of those things that can really affect this whole system. So World Food Program has a big role to play in helping that system continue to evolve. And it might have evolved in volume terms, but it's facing many of those other resilience and safety and quality issues. Smart businesses are making investments in redundancies, in risk management and supply chains. And those that will lose out in an era of climate shift and risk are those that are not making those kinds of investments. Now, World Food Program can be not only working with those kinds of companies that are making those kinds of investments, but also helping governments to understand what is a strategy to make themselves appealing as suppliers within a supply chain situation where the buyers are themselves making portfolio diversification decisions, and also what sort of physical infrastructure and other kinds of governance decisions and strategies and systems need to be put in place to be able to deal with those kinds of disruptions.